Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Reesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Elizabeth Mikotowicz, artist, fashion designer, writer, and activist. Please enjoy Elizabeth Mikotowicz. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I am here with Elizabeth Mikotowicz, artist, fashion designer, writer, and activist. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
I'm excited to chat with you about creativity and hear how creativity shows up in your life and all the things that you do. But before we get there, why don't you take a couple of minutes and let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
So I have an environmentally friendly clothing brand based on my art. All the designs are my paintings. I've had some art shows and I've gotten some bills passed for, the good of the people. And basically 6 years ago, I was painting murals as a federal inmate and my life fell completely apart in my early 20s. Like I grew up, I had a really great family. I was adopted into, a really stable, good environment. And I was never abused or exposed to anything bad growing up. But once I got, out on my own, my son's father was really abusive and he assaulted me to the point, my skull was showing. And when I went to the emergency room for that, they pumped me full of opiates and told me I was on too small of a dose to get addicted. And then when they sent me to the pain clinic, and it was clear this was going to be like a regular thing that I was going to be, they wanted me to take opioids every single day. I tried to refuse and they threatened me with child protective services. When I went to the pain clinic, I think the guy was one of those whale doctors who got money for every, person he got prescribed. And because I noticed since I was no longer on my parents' private insurance, I was now on the state insurance, I was treated a lot differently. And, I was young and scared and, now I know how to advocate for myself and speak up, but back then I didn't. And so I took it and, the abuse got worse. And I eventually went to the battered women's shelter in Bangor, Spruce Run, which is now Partners for Peace. And they turned me away with 2 beds open. And they said that my injuries were too extensive and it put the other women in the shelter in danger. And so that was like rock bottom for me because I made a deal with my father that if they wouldn't help me, that I would, sign temporary guardianship over to him. Because with the brain damage, I was dropping and going into seizures constantly with a 14-year-old running around. So like as a parent, I'm having to face the fact that like I'm not a safe caregiver for my daughter anymore. And after that, I lost everything. And I lost my insurance once I signed temporary guardianship over. So I could no longer go to the doctor and get, the meds I needed and, manipulation therapy. And I was now self-medicating on the streets.
Yeah.
And the only people that helped me were drug dealers. They gave me places to stay. They, protected me, and I'm not saying they're just these great people, but they're not all bad. And, most drug dealers in America, they're just trying to pay their rent. They're just trying to put food on the table. And it's okay, lose my housing or sell these pills the doctor gave me, so I can pay my rent.
Yeah.
And, people's basic needs were met. The crime rate would not be so high. 70% of women that go to prison in America have some sort of domestic violence or sexual assault trauma before they even get arrested.
Yeah.
And, and women just keep slipping through the cracks, well, everybody does, but especially women in this country. And so eventually in 2011, I got arrested on drug charges, did 7 months in the state. After that, I was done. I didn't go back to selling drugs. I was like, I'm, not doing this anymore. And then the feds picked it up in 2013 for the exact same bust. So there's no such thing as double jeopardy when it comes to drug dealers. You know, this, you can do a bid in the state, do 10 years, 20 years, and then the day you get out, the feds can come and pick you up for the exact same situation. And that's what happened to me. And then I got to see all the abuse and horrible things that go on, you know, in prison. And I mean, I met so many incredible women in there. And
Sounds like not only did you experience horrific things, but it also, on some level, motivated you to
absolutely
act for change and make changes not only in your own life, but for those around you as well.
Yeah. I mean, everybody there kind of had a story like mine where their back was against the wall. And you know, people are so quick to be like, oh, they're a criminal. Oh, I mean, I've had conservative women tell me, if you don't want to get raped by cops, then don't go to prison.
I'm curious if there's, I mean, with your history and the story and coming out of the prison system and starting a brand and your art, how did you keep that creativity alive through this whole process?
Well, I would draw a lot. There was a style of art called Zentangle, and it's kind of like meditative art. And I'm actually working on an adult coloring book, and I'm including everything I've learned about trauma and recovery, stuff that helped me for people. And I really kind of got lost in that, you know, in county jail. In prison, I could take programs and get myself paint. And that was my side hustle in prison. I would paint coffee cups for inmates and seal it with floor wax. And, you know, I'd have to doctor the brushes with, you know, nail clippers. And I only got raided twice and lost everything. But, you know, the inmates there were so supportive of me. They'd show up at my queue, be like, screw those cops. Here's 3 new colors for you. You know, because they love that, you know, they could send their kids home something, you know, other than just, you know, a crocheted item.
Sure.
And so, you know, I made a lot of money doing that. And at Danbury, when I went back for probation, I did not do well on probation at all. I literally had a panic attack every time I left my house. And when I got out, I went to they give you a month's supply of the meds that the prison puts you on. So you're physically, you know, your body's physically dependent on them by then. And these psych meds are very, very dangerous if you just stop taking them. So I go to the pharmacy because I was running low, and it was like $1,300 of meds that I had no way to pay for. So now I'm like trying to space these meds out, and my mental health is just spiraling. I went to the state to be like, hey, I need help. Like, I just got out of prison. Like, please help me. And they said, the only way we can give you medical insurance is if you get pregnant. And I'm like, I'm just trying to be okay enough, like, for my other 2 kids that are already here. Like, are you serious? And so when I went to prison at Danbury, my job was painting murals there. And it was one of the highest paying jobs in the prison. I got paid $57 a month. And in there, that is balling. I mean, normal jobs in there pay you $5.25 for working 40 hours a week, a month. That's all you get a month. So your labor is extorted. They have bypassed slavery laws with mass incarceration. And these corporations, you know, they, over the pandemic, they said, we'll buy all the prisons as long as they say 90% full capacity. Like, these people are the product. They are profiting off of the suffering of the American people. We make up 25% of the global incarceration population. We have more people in prison than continents.
Right.
And, you know, they're trying to stand on this, we're the land of the free. No, you're not. You're the land of, you know, rape and mass incarceration, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And over the pandemic, at the beginning, there were 3 empty properties for every homeless person. Now there's 29 empty properties, and they're criminalizing homelessness. And when you criminalize a group of people, what happens? You put them in jail. I mean, you can't even feed homeless people in certain cities anymore without getting fined. So what's going to happen? They're going to put all these people in jail, and they're going to put them to work. So because the corporations don't even want to pay us a minimum wage.
Yeah.
Just forget a living wage. They want to pay us pennies on the hour because they're so greedy. I was literally under the, influence that, oh yeah, we had the civil rights movement, but now everything's okay and everything's equal. And
Mm,
it took me going to prison to see, the truth about it. And it was a hard awakening.
yeah, tough reality for sure. Well, seeing as how this podcast, we are here to talk about creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
It means to just express yourself. And, like I use that as a coping mechanism. Like I can't control like the world around me,
Mm-hmm.
but I can control what's on a canvas, and I can
Mm,
make it as, beautiful and stunning as I want, or I can make it like as horrifying and ugly as, whatever. And, you know, like you can find so many ways to be creative. I mean, we were making nail polish in prison with colored pencils and floor wax. I mean, there are so many ways to express yourself and, do it in a healthy way. And, we'd write songs too. We'd sing, and, you can't just let outside circumstances, take that away from you.
right. Keeping that alive.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges that you faced in, I know a lot of people come up against creative challenges, and what are some of the creative challenges that you experienced and how did you move through that?
Well, I having access to things
Sure.
in prison was probably the biggest one. And then it's considered contraband because if it's not sold on the commissary, you're not supposed to have it. So then I had to worry about, cops, taking it away from me, and then, I'd have to somehow get it all back. And that was frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the murals I painted in prison, they only gave me blue. So I had white and black for shading, but she's like, I just want you to make this place look beautiful and inspiring and not the white walls. And she's like, but I want you to use this blue color. And I was like, okay. So, I mean, it was kind of funny because it ended up being like my blue period. And I know other artists have done that throughout
Yeah.
the ages. And, for me, it was totally not intentional. And, but, I had a lot of fun with it anyway. So,
Yeah. It sounds like, sometimes those constraints on creativity ask us to be even more creative with what it is we're doing. And
right.
what's your earliest memory of being creative?
I remember having finger paint as a kid, and I remember I wasn't allowed to have it in my room, but I ended up like painting with my friend in my room, and they like went crazy with it and like started smearing the paint all over themselves. And I'm going, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to put it on the paper. And we ended up getting in a lot of trouble for that. But yeah, it was just, and I always loved music. Music was like, I
Mm-hmm.
used to like to figure out the harmonies of, songs on the radio and, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like that creativity has kept you going and is part of your activism in and who you are. And what are I guess what I'm curious about is who or what inspires you these days?
A lot of the women that are like coming forward and just not backing down against these abusive men, like I find so much inspiration from them. And
Mm-hmm.
Van Gogh will always, have a place in my heart. Like he was just a tortured soul, and he created the most beautiful pieces of art, and he didn't even get recognized for it in, his lifetime, but he's like
Mm-hmm.
forever going to be immortal, because of that. And, I've struggled with my own mental health and had it weaponized against me so many times in my life. And, like I always kind of hold on to his story. Like, well, if he can do it, I can get through this too. So,
Yeah. And how how has your creativity empowered you to be an advocate for other women who have suffered in the prison system and allowed you to reach out to senators and other people in positions of power who have the ability to get laws passed and
I've done a lot of political pieces or human rights advocacy pieces, I guess. And, Yeah, there was a girl in prison who I never did portraits. I was like too intimidated to try it, and she would not take no for an answer. And now she's like this, life coach doing amazing things. And like she wouldn't take no for an answer. And I was so glad she didn't, because it turns out I'm actually really good at portraits. And,
Hmm.
now that's like one of my selling points. And,
Hmm.
I've done a lot with that. And I'm actually doing a series of women right now. This is one of them.
Hmm. Nice.
Yeah, and I'm super corny. I like to like glue gems on and make it bling a little bit. But yeah, art can send messages and express horrible things
Yeah.
throughout the ages. Like there are some of those really powerful like war paintings that just totally depict what's going on, and I've always thought that was so cool and just
Hmm.
like a great way to pass a legacy on.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I'm curious, of all of the art that you do, what are some of your favorite things to do, or what are the things that you only do for yourself that you don't share with other people?
Um, well, I really don't think there's anything I haven't shared with people, but I love painting flowers. Like that was
Hmm.
one of the first things I painted that, I really figured out my own shading techniques. And I'm super weird. Like one day I will be painting like butterflies and rainbows and, all the like super girly stuff. And the next day it'll be like skulls and,
Hmm.
ravens and this totally gothic, feel to it. And so like you never know what you're gonna get with it. It's
Yeah.
just
But I think that's part of the creative process, right? You're going on your experience and what you feel and what is being called to appear on the canvas. Or are you someone who really thinks about what you want to paint before, or you show up to the canvas and it tells you what's going to show up?
sometimes I'll get like painter's block, I guess, because I can't like I'll have like 20 thought like where my brain processing's faster than the normal person. Like I can't
Mhm.
grab onto a thought long enough. And so sometimes I'll just go online and look at pictures of stuff
Yeah.
and, see if I can get inspiration off that. Usually I pretty much know what I'm going to do. And then it
Mm.
always comes out completely different than I had planned. But that's okay.
Yeah, that's the process, I guess, of what we imagine and then how it turns out tends to be different for sure. Now, I mean, I am making a huge assumption here, but I imagine that people in prison may not feel like they are creative, or people that you have met through all of the experiences you've had in your life have not felt that they are creative, or creativity isn't for them. How would you encourage others to find creativity in their lives?
So I would, Zentangle is a really great art. It's a
Mm.
really great style of art, and you don't have to be super creative or super talented to do it. And
Hmm.
to, just something to start out with. And it's like really relaxing, and you can do affirmations with it.
Hmm.
It really helped me, with, meditating and trying to calm my brain down because I get stuck on a certain traumatic, issue
Hmm.
and not be able to move on from it. And this would help me like distract myself. And,
Hmm.
it's a really because you can literally take like draw kids like coloring books and use that and then do Zentangle art in it, and it will come out with this completely different thing. And
Hmm.
it's just there's so many things you can do with it.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what Zentangle is for individuals who
Yeah,
may not know?
so it's like patterns, and
Hmm.
they're simple patterns, and like you start out with like a tiny little square piece of paper, and then you just do lines, and you just kind of create like you could even scribble on it basically, and in every section you do a different pattern.
Hmm.
And it was really cool, like, and then you can do your own stuff. Like I ended up doing a spider web with Zentangle, and flower, like I put actual objects into the picture as, the separation of the lines. And that turns out to be really cool. And, that's why I say you could take, a kid's coloring book and
Yeah.
do it that way.
Nice. That's a, I'm not, I am unfamiliar with this style of art, Zentangle. So it's really cool to learn other ways of, it sounds like it's a very mindful process, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of intention and can help slow you down. At least it
Yeah.
sounds like that's what
And
you
you
found.
can look them up. You can look them up
Mm-hmm.
on the internet and
Okay.
just put in Zentangle designs, and they'll have a
Okay.
whole list of, Zentangle designs. And this is the adult coloring book that I'm working on. And
Nice.
I'm drawing my own pictures for you to do the Zentangle designs in them. And I'm putting like tips for trauma and, stuff that I learned in therapy
Yeah.
that really helped, on my healing journey. So, and, with this brand, like my environmentally friendly clothing brand, like I created all these paintings like during my own healing journey. So, the
Yeah.
whole point was, I wanted to make money with my art, but I also wanted, a product that, inspired women and lifted them up and, just encouraged them to be, their best self. And I just want to empower everybody to feel good. It took me so long to like finally feel okay in my skin, and I
Yeah.
might have been proud of who I was, but like the trauma would just come in, and I just feel like a shaken up mess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a lot to get through, but these are fun little things that I did instead of relapsing and getting into destructive behavior.
Yeah. Making new choices or different choices that
Yeah.
is effective. And what are the things that you do that continue to empower you yourself?
Well, I work with state representatives to get better bills on the table and kind of expose this dystopian nightmare we're
Mhm.
living right now. And yeah, I started by, there was a cop up in Calais, Maine, who gave this 16-year-old girl drugs to give to her mother, who was paying him with sex acts, basically. And they only charged him with the drugs. They didn't charge him with, a sex crime. So I literally called the DA up and I'm like, why wouldn't you charge him with sex crime? He extorted her for addiction. Like,
Mm.
he's a cop. Like he has too much power in this situation. And he said, well, the way the law is written is technically consent, but you've made some really good arguments. So why don't you write to the Maine state legislature, and, that's how you can get these referendums in and get new bills on the table. So I started doing that, and some Maine state legislatures actually listened to me and, were like, you made really good points that we never would have thought of. And, that was like really really validating to like my inner voice, because at first I was like, why would they listen to me? Like I'm just a convict and a battered woman with a brain injury and addiction and all that stuff. And then I'm like, well, why wouldn't they listen to me? Like I know what's I know what happened and I know what's wrong. And they can't see it up in their ivory tower, way up here. And so I started going to, the political meeting, like the Democratic political meetings,
Mhm.
in town, and the city hall meetings. And I really started advocating for the homeless, because it just blew up over the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, the corporations are doing it on purpose just so they can get everybody in jail. But, the landlords too, they were charging these outrageous application fees,
Mm.
just to apply for an apartment. Like we paid over $1,000 just for these landlords to tell us no, and they're making triple the rent in these
Mm.
application fees without even having to turn anything on. So this
Mhm.
is just another money scam, from the rich, basically. And I made a big deal about this to, the Maine state reps and the Bangor City Hall Council, and it passed in Bangor, but it didn't pass in the states. So basically what the Tenant Bill of Rights said is you can only charge an application fee if a lease is signed. And you know what? That's fair. You're not just taking people's money for
Sure.
no reason. For an application you're not even going to look at. So I mean,
Yeah.
and it's like the banks with their overdraft fees. So I I would write out what I say, and I try to sound like super intelligent and, not like I had just been in prison and my, yeah. So I really, worked on, speaking in front of people. And that was really hard for me to do, just being out of prison and everything. Like I would have a panic attack every time I left my house when I first got out. Like it was not rational at all. I mean, the indoctrination and the rewiring, people go through when they're in prison. Like, I mean, it really takes a toll. And that's why we have high recidivism rate.
And it sounds like you put in a lot of work to make sure it doesn't happen again. And you've made choices and changes in your life so that you can continue to support not only yourself, but other people who are
absolutely
stuck or coming out or going through the system that you were in as well. Yeah. So to kind of wrap up our conversation, I'm so curious for you, what does it feel like in your body to be creative?
I kind of like go into this, like, not like a meditative state, but it's just like you kind of get on a roll with things. And I hate it when I get interrupted or somebody like, stops me. I guess that's the autism thing, kicking in, because you like get in a mode and in a routine and you're just like going. But it feels like I'm just, creating something, beautiful for the world. And that brings me a lot of joy.
Nice. That's wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with me this evening. If people want to learn more about your art, your story, where can they find that? How can they get in touch with you?
So my book, No Justice, Just Us, is coming out very soon. I should have the release date next week. I am on Instagram and TikTok. My handles are the same. It's EPM_art_1111. And the clothing website is http://www.legalerice.com/en/elizabeth.mikotowicz. And you have to put my name at the end of it because there are other artists through Legalerice, and it won't go to my website. It'll go to their main website. So
I will put that in show notes so people have easy access and can click directly to your website. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me and for all of the work that you are doing in your life to support other people.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.